Hey, what's up? This is Garda Trace. Alongside the main series of Dragon Ball, there have been numerous movies released during its run. For the most part, they are non-serial movies that are not a part of the canon storyline. As a matter of fact, the majority of movies are not even serialized with one another. They are generally one-shots that give you extra content outside the canon series. It wouldn't be until movies such as Battle of Gods and Resurrection F where movies start tying into the canon. However, with Dragon Ball Super anime and manga each retelling the events of those movies in their own way, it makes their status as canon questionable as you have multiple versions of the same story. So far, Dragon Ball Super Broly doesn't have this issue, but that could change in the future. Superhero does have this issue, however. Although the movies prior to Battle of Gods are non-canon, is there a way for any of them to potentially fit into the canon? Are there any points within the main series that would lend themselves to allow any of the movies to fit? Well, if we're talking about the 3 original Dragon Ball movies, as well as the 10-year anniversary film, they're automatically disqualified because they are alternate retellings of events of the series and in no way can coexist with them. This video will focus on the 13 original Dragon Ball Z films, as they each take inspiration from events in the series, but are their own original stories. We also have to take into consideration when these films were released, what was happening in the series during their production, as well as the designs of the characters in order to determine where they're supposed to fit. So it's time to answer the question, which Dragon Ball Z movies could be canon? Movie 1, Dragon Ball Z. In this movie, Gohan has the same design he had when Goku introduced him to his friends prior to their encounter with Raditz. Gohan at this point is 4 years old, has not undergone any training, and is still a timid, coddled crybaby. Piccolo still had beef with Goku during this point in time, and only teams up with him later to deal with a common enemy in Garlic Jr., but quickly turns on him when Garlic Jr. is seemingly defeated. At this point, Piccolo shows no concern for Gohan at all, which is radically different from how he will be in later movies, where he's always there to save Gohan in the nick of time. Garlic Jr. is ultimately defeated by Gohan tapping into his hidden power, something no one knew about previously. Gohan himself had no memory of doing so, and Goku decided to keep it a secret from Chi-Chi. This movie is definitely an early Saiyan arc movie from the time Raditz was introduced to when he was defeated, but there's no point where this movie can fit. When Goku introduced his son Gohan to his friends, that immediately led to Raditz showing up, explaining Goku's origins, and kidnapping Gohan, which immediately led to Goku and Piccolo teaming up to fight Raditz, which ended with the deaths of Goku and Raditz, which immediately led to Piccolo kidnapping Gohan and abandoning him in the wilderness for 6 months, then training him for another 6 months. There are no breaks in the story to allow the events of the movie to coexist with them. This movie can't take place before these events either, as neither Bulma, Kuririn, or Kame Sennin knew Gohan existed until Goku introduced him to them shortly before Raditz showed up. It was a really big shocker to them, as Goku, the guy who previously couldn't tell genders apart without patting someone on the crotch, plus didn't even know what a girl was until he was 14, later retconned to 12, has had sex, and has a child. In the movie, after Gohan is kidnapped, Goku meets up with Bulma, Kuririn, and Kame Sennin to track Gohan, but they can't know Gohan exists at this point if you try to place the events before the Saiyan arc. There's also the fact that Goku was shocked to see Gohan's hidden power used to defeat Garlic Jr., but he was already shocked to see Gohan's hidden power used to injure Raditz. He can't exactly be shocked to know that Gohan has hidden potential twice. When introducing Gohan to Bulma, Kuririn, and Kame Sennin, he had no idea Gohan was even capable of that, as Chi-Chi never allowed Gohan to fight, so Goku never previously had any way to know about it until Raditz showed up. So the early Saiyan arc has too much going on to accommodate the events of this movie. However, this is the only movie to try to retroactively tie into the events of the series with the god-awful Garlic Jr. arc, which takes place between the Frieza and Cell arcs. This arc directly references the events of the movie and even shows a flashback of it. However, you need to have seen the movie for the flashback to mean anything to you. If you're watching the series but aren't watching the movies, you won't even know what the flashback is even referencing. But due to the issues the movie has with coexisting with the series itself, using the movies as filler material for the series doesn't work at all, so there's nothing this terrible arc can do to try to squeeze this movie into the series. The only reason to even watch this arc is for Kuririn and Maron. However, that ass ain't enough to make this movie canon. So DBZ Movie 1 can't be canon. Movie 2, The World's Strongest Guy. In this movie, Piccolo cares for Gohan and also comes to his aid, which is a complete 180 of the previous movie where he couldn't care less about Gohan. Also, Gohan admires Piccolo and dreams about going on adventures with him and getting away from the constant studying Chi-Chi has him do. Goku's Dogi has the Kaiokanji, plus he can also perform the Kaioken, so everything in this movie places it after the 1 year of training for the arrival of the Saiyans. But there would be no place for it to fit in that time period, as the Dragon Team would be too preoccupied with the Saiyans for this to happen. You might say this could happen after the Saiyan invasion, but no, that's not possible either, as too much is going on. The fight against the Saiyans immediately leads to the Dragon Team planning to travel to planet Namek for new Dragon Balls, which immediately leads to Goku, Gohan, and Kuririn being hospitalized, which immediately leads to Mr. Popo bringing Bulma to the spaceship God arrived to Earth in, which immediately leads to Bulma, Kuririn, and Gohan going to Namek after their stay in the hospital. Also, take note that Gohan's hairstyle has changed before going to Namek. Gohan's appearance is a good way to determine what time period a movie is taking place in, and since he still has the long, shaggy hair he had in the late Saiyan arc, this is before they go to Namek, but it couldn't take place at that point anyway, which will be a common theme for the next few movies. Another damning thing that keeps this movie from fitting into the timeline is the fact that Piccolo dies during the late Saiyan arc and won't be revived until 3/4 of the way into the Frieza arc. However, he's alive here. And the movie even plays a clip of Piccolo getting killed by Nappa, so what the fuck, movie? Characters being alive when they are dead in the series will be another common theme in these movies, and you're expected to not think much of it. However, this movie calls so much attention to it. Plus, Goku was incapacitated by this point and is unable to initially go to Namek. Another thing about this movie that's really off is Bulma herself. Her design in this movie is her design from the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai arc, but at no point does she look like this during the Saiyan and Frieza arcs, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. Dragon Ball's story was constantly on the move during the Saiyan arc, so there's no way for movie 2 to be canon. Movie 3, a super decisive battle for Earth. Remember what I said about Gohan's appearance being a determining factor for when a movie takes place? Well, in this movie, he has the bowl haircut he got right before going to Namek. So this is a Frieza arc movie, particularly the early Frieza arc where the manga was by this point. This movie, as the name entails, takes place on Earth. The Frieza arc takes place primarily on Namek. So that alone throws a monkey wrench into the idea of this movie being canon, as they're on the wrong planet in this movie. But it doesn't stop there. This movie features Yamcha, Tenshinhan, and Chaozu. This is one of only 2 Dragon Ball Z movies to feature these characters. Piccolo is here as well. But by this point, they were all dead. All of them would be in Anoyo traveling the Serpentine Road to arrive on Kaio's planet, and Piccolo would not be revived until the middle of the Frieza arc, while the others are revived at the very end of the arc. So both the celestial and mortality status of the characters are inconsistent between the movie and the series. Yamcha also sports the Kaio kanji on his dogi, something he has never had. Also, Gohan regrows his tail in this movie, however his tail never grew back since Vegeta cut it off at the end of the Saiyan arc. Nothing in this movie can coexist with the events of the series, so this movie essentially exists in an alternate universe, therefore, it can't be canon. Movie 4, Super Saiyan Son Goku. This movie is pretty much in the same boat as the previous movie. This movie was released during the Frieza arc's run, but that arc takes place on Namek, meanwhile this movie takes place on Earth. Also, Piccolo was alive in this movie, which is correct as he was revived in both the manga and anime by the release of this movie. However, we still have the one damning issue of being on the wrong planet. When Piccolo was revived with the first wish from Porunga, the second wish took him from Kaio's planet straight to Namek, where he participates in the fight against Frieza. He won't be on Earth until close to Namek's destruction, with the final wish from Porunga to transport everyone except Goku and Frieza from Namek to Earth. And when considering Gohan's age and appearance, as well as the fact that Goku is present, there is no slotting this movie after the Frieza arc. As a matter of fact, Frieza himself is mentioned in passing as if he's still alive. But Goku won't return to Earth until long after Frieza has been dealt with. Another thing to take note is the appearance of Higher Dragon in this movie. Higher Dragon debuted in movie 3, but appears here as well. However, these movies are not in continuity with one another, so is this the same Higher Dragon from movie 3? And since Higher Dragon debuted in a movie, that means he couldn't possibly fit within the series. Although that didn't stop Toei from featuring him in anime filler, but having Higher Dragon appear in the anime series is the same as having Garlic Jr. appear in anime filler. If you haven't seen the movies these characters are from, you won't know who they are or where they come from. It'll just be random as hell to see them. And one anomaly featured in this movie is the pseudo Super Saiyan transformation. No such form exists in the series, and the actual Super Saiyan transformation isn't introduced until 10 days after this movie's release. So whatever this is supposed to be is quickly rendered irrelevant and never brought up again in any capacity, and since Goku is actually capable of transforming into a Super Saiyan by the end of the Frieza arc, that's yet another nail in the coffin on how this movie couldn't take place after the Frieza arc. Movie 4 can never fit into the canon. Movie 5, The Incredible Strongest vs. Strongest. I've noticed there is a lot of confusion on the timeline placement of this movie, and that was the main reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. In my Everything Wrong with Cooler's Revenge video, I have gotten countless comments on how this movie takes place during the 3-year training period after Future Trunks' warning about number 19 and number 20, but apparently no one was actually paying attention because if they did, they wouldn't have missed this line. This is so non-canon it hurts. For all of the time Gohan returned to Earth from Namek and had the bowl haircut, Goku has not been with him. Goku returns a year later and Gohan noticeably aged and his hair is long and shaggy. Remember, Gohan's appearance is a good way to determine a movie's place in the timeline. In this movie, Gohan has the bowl haircut and same overall appearance he has had throughout the Frieza arc from the moment he left for planet Namek to returning to Earth. 130 days after returning to Earth, there's a noticeable difference in Gohan's hairstyle as they're summoning Porunga to revive Kuririn, Yamcha, and Goku, although the latter isn't dead. Another 130 days pass to summon Porunga again to revive everyone else and give the Namekians a new home. Then 1 year passes, and Gohan is now 6 years old. He's slightly taller, his hair has grown long and shaggy and kept in a ponytail, so he has drastically changed in appearance by the time Frieza and King Cold go to Earth at the end of the Frieza arc. But this movie has him as the same 5-year-old with a bowl haircut he was during his time on Namek. Also, for some reason, Gohan has a tail in this movie, but he's not supposed to as it never grew back after Vegeta cut it off. Movie 3 has the same issue, but at least the tail serves a purpose in the plot as Gohan transforms into an Ozaru in that movie, but not here. He just has a tail for no goddamn reason. Not only that, but Goku himself throws a monkey wrench in the idea of placing this movie during the 3-year training period. When Goku defeats Frieza, he narrowly escapes Namek's destruction using one of the pods from the Ginyu Tokusentai, and is taken to Yardrat where he learns how to teleport in all the time he's been away from Earth until returning after Frieza and King Cold were killed by Future Trunks. During his conversation with Trunks, he shows that with training, he is able to become a Super Saiyan on command. In the movie, he is on Earth much sooner than he's supposed to be, as there was no time skip after defeating Frieza on Namek. Also, he relies on the Kaioken while fighting Cooler, and only goes Super Saiyan when he gets angry, which shows he can't do it on command. He is an untrained Super Saiyan, unlike how he was when meeting Future Trunks where he can transform on command. Also, he at no point teleports or even entertains the idea that he could do so. Therefore, this could not happen after Goku and Future Trunks met. This is why I called Cooler weak in the Everything Wrong with video, as he stood no chance against the same untrained Super Saiyan Goku that Frieza put up a good fight against until fatigued. This movie is essentially an alternate timeline where Goku comes straight home after defeating Frieza on Namek. During this movie's production, Toei knew Goku would defeat Frieza, but they didn't know how it would happen as that part of the story wasn't written yet. They wouldn't know about Goku trying to spare Frieza, Frieza getting cut in half, Frieza's final act of defiance before Goku finishes him off, Goku supposedly dying to Namek's destruction, Goku being on Yardrat, the fact that there's such a planet called Yardrat, Frieza not being dead after all, the fact that King Cold exists, the fact that Future Trunks exists, the warning about the artificial humans in the future, or the fact that Goku can teleport. None of those aspects can coexist with this movie. Since Frieza was the current villain at the time, Toei capitalized on it by making a Frieza clone to be his brother who is seeking revenge for Frieza's defeat, but they jumped the gun as they didn't know how the Frieza arc would ultimately end. So this is why it can't fit within the 3-year time gap after Future Trunks' warning. But not only do fans like to place it there, the Daizenshu 6 likes to place it there as well. But while this series, whether it be the anime or manga, never acknowledges the events of this movie, Cooler makes a cameo appearance in Dragon Ball GT, which is in continuity of the anime, so it's likely they're trying to fit it into the anime's continuity, but the problem with doing so is no different from trying to fit it into the manga's continuity. Also, just to kick a movie while it's already down, Higher Dragon is here too. So this movie has the same problem as movies 3 and 4 in that regard, but this does mark his final appearance in a movie. While this movie tries to tie into the continuity, there's too much stacked against it for it to be possible. Therefore, movie 5 can't be canon. Movie 6, Clash, 10 Billion Powerful Warriors. I'm not even gonna beat around the bush with this one. Movie 6 can't be canon. It has no chance in hell to be canon. Why, you ask? Well, there is one damning thing that immediately disqualifies it from being canon, and that's the fact that Dende is God in this movie. That may not sound like a problem at first, as he does become God in this series. The problem is the fact that he will not become God until 7 months after the release of this movie. What the fuck? This is so random. How did this happen? In the manga, Piccolo had recently assimilated God and confronts Cell by the release of this movie. In the anime, God was still God at that point, as this movie was released by the time Vegeta destroyed number 19. Dende should be with his fellow Namekians as the Big Getty Star shoves its dick up Namek's ass, but instead, he's God, and he's in the heavenly realm with Mr. Popo above Earth. Whose idea was it to make Dende God in this movie? Was it Toei's idea? Then Toriyama was inspired to do the same in his series? Was it Toriyama's idea and Toei decided to do it for the movie? Or was this simply a coincidence? I find it highly unlikely this is a coincidence, because why would anyone do this completely out of nowhere? If it was Toei's idea, why would they take this route in the first place? It would make a lot more sense for Dende to be on New Namek, so we'd have a Namekian we know and care about to sympathize with as the Metal Coolers take over the planet. Kaio could have been the one to let the Dragon Team know about what's happening on New Namek, as opposed to Dende randomly being God and somehow sensing what's happening on New Namek to tell the Dragon Team about it. If it was Toriyama's idea, then Toei knowingly revealed one hell of a spoiler. Maybe Toriyama thought he could make Dende God in the manga sooner than he actually did, but considering what was going on in the manga at the time during this movie's production and release, there's no time for Dende to be made God. There are no interviews or information explaining how or why this happened, and I'm sure fans in Japan were baffled at this turn of events. However, while this alone already puts the kibosh on this movie fitting into the canon, we're not done. Not even close. Remember how the past 4 movies had the issue of taking place on Earth, but the characters were on Namek or on the way to Namek at those points in the series? Well, this movie has the opposite problem. It takes place on Namek when they should be on Earth dealing with the artificial humans. No point within the Cell arc would allow this detour to New Namek. You could say it takes place during the 3-year time gap in preparation of the arrival of the artificial humans, But that doesn't work because of Vegeta, who is now showing off his newly acquired Super Saiyan transformation. He doesn't show it off until he's up against number 19, which came as a surprise to everyone. You could make the argument that only Goku saw him go Super Saiyan in the movie, however, the others would have surely sensed it. But even if you're willing to overlook that inconsistency, the Dende issue is too egregious to ignore. Dende is not supposed to be God until Goku and Gohan finish their training in the Room of Spirit and Time. Then Goku teleports to New Namek to get a Namekian to make new Dragon Balls for Earth, and brings back Dende, who reactivates and alters the Dragon Balls God made, and also becomes the new God. Looking at Gohan's appearance at that point in the series and comparing it to his appearance in this movie, where he is clearly younger, has a different hairstyle, different clothes, and is incapable of transforming into a Super Saiyan at this point, there's no way a godly Dende can coincide with Gohan as he appears in this movie. However, the Daizenshu 6 really has a hard-on for fitting Cooler movies into the timeline, most likely due to Cooler's appearance in GT. They ignore Gohan's current status in favor of prioritizing Dende, claiming this movie takes place long after when it was released. According to the Daizenshu 6, this movie takes place during the 10 days grace period before the Cell games. That would be the only moment of downtime during the Cell arc to allow this field trip to another planet, and would explain how they know where New Namek is, as Goku does travel there to get Dende in the first place. However, it would mean New Namek is a hell of a lot closer than the old Namek was, as they apparently have the time to travel by spaceship to New Namek during this 10-day time frame. However, that definitely isn't the case, as New Namek is so far, Goku wasn't able to sense the key of the Namekians without Kaio's help, then he teleported there and back. Also, in this movie, New Namek looks just like Old Namek, but when we're actually introduced to New Namek in the series, it looks entirely different from the old one. And of course, Gohan, as he appears in this movie, is plain and simply not compatible with Dende being God during that point in the series. And besides, during this movie's production, those in charge wouldn't even know who Cell is, let alone know about the Cell games and any 10 days grace period before it. Hell, Toriyama wouldn't have known that far ahead either, as he had just introduced Cell as this movie was released. Also, this movie acknowledges Cooler, the villain from the previous movie, so it's in continuity with movie 5. However, movie 5 can't be canon, and since this movie acknowledges characters and events that are incompatible with the series, this movie's status as canon is in the same state as Chaozu's relevance. Non-existent. Movie 7, Extreme Battle, The Three Great Super Saiyans. This movie opens with number 20, aka Dr. Gero, getting killed by number 17, while number 18 watches on, which also happens in the series. But what doesn't happen in the series is Goku and company shopping at a mall, as the series doesn't have time for leisurely activities like that. This is clearly a mid-Cell arc movie, as it acknowledges number 20's death at the hands of number 17, and clearly takes place before any training takes place in the Room of Spirit and Time, as Trunks' hair is still short and he still uses his sword. Neither he nor Vegeta seem capable of using the Super Saiyan Grade 2 or Grade 3 forms, and Gohan's age, hair, and incapability of going Super Saiyan places him firmly before the point during or after his training where Goku and he will be maintaining their Super Saiyan forms at all times. Dende isn't God in this movie, so they're not repeating the same mistakes as the previous movie. Instead, they're making all new ones. This movie directly places itself within the events of the Cell arc. However, it places itself within the events of a story that was still ongoing with no resolution in sight. Number 17 and number 18 appear in the beginning of this movie, but their appearance is merely a cameo as they aren't the film's antagonists. The antagonists are 3 new artificial humans, well, new to us, but earlier in the production line, number 13, number 14, and number 15. Toriyama featured a reference sheet of Dr. Gero's artificial humans in the manga, and the 3 new artificial humans featured in this movie were listed to be nearly completed. In this movie, they're completed, not by Dr. Gero, but by his supercomputer. But outside of this reference sheet, number 13, number 14, and number 15 are never seen or mentioned in the series. Also, where are number 17 and number 18? Where did they go? Were they defeated? If so, why is Trunks still hanging around? Did they just fuck off to somewhere else and not bother anyone? Did Cell absorb them? By the way, where is Cell? This supercomputer in the bunker hidden underneath Dr. Gero's lab resembles the one that was destroyed by Trunks and Kuririn, and an embryonic Cell was destroyed here as well. So, is Cell's embryo here? If so, was he killed? The movie can't answer because the movie doesn't know. The Dragon Ball Z movies pluck the characters from whatever point in the series was current at the time and drops them off in their respective movies. The movies are typically far removed from the events of the series. There have been references to the series, like movie 1 having Garlic Jr. mention Goku and Piccolo's fight in the Tenkaichi Budokai, movie 2 showing a clip of Piccolo's sacrifice to save Gohan, or movie 3 having the Tullus Crusher Corps mention Frieza. There have even been remakes of events in the series, like movie 1 having Goku and Piccolo remove their weighted clothes to take on a threat that has kidnapped Gohan. Movie 2 featuring a beam struggle where Goku uses a Kaioken x4 to win the struggle. Or movie 4 featuring a Namekian Mazoku wishing to restore his youth and getting a hole in his chest thanks to Goku bursting through it. But the movies exist in isolation to the series, so it doesn't matter that they're incompatible. Movie 5 was the first movie to directly tie into the series, which was the end of the Frieza arc. Even though it doesn't accurately predict the ending of that arc, it at least places itself at a point where most loose ends are tied up. This movie directly ties itself into the series and awkwardly places itself and wraps up in the middle of the Cell arc, which is still ongoing, but no point in the series lends itself to this movie. Number 19 and number 20 immediately give way to number 17 and number 18, and they immediately give way to Cell, and by the time everything is resolved, Goku is too dead to be in this movie. The 10 days before the Cell games doesn't work either because in this movie, Gohan is too young and sure as hell isn't one of the 3 great Super Saiyans. There sure as hell isn't any time for Chi-Chi to drag Goku and Gohan along to shop at a mall, nor is there any time for Kuririn, Kame-Sennin, Oolong, and Trunks to arrive one day too early for the world's most beautiful woman pageant. Goku seemingly never suffered from the heart disease in this movie's continuity, as it's never mentioned, but it's a major plot point of the Cell arc and is the reason Goku is incapacitated through most of the early to mid stages of it before recovering and taking Gohan, Vegeta, and Trunks to the Room of Spirit and Time to train. This movie constantly asks you not to think about its lack of cohesion with the series while simultaneously bludgeoning you over the head with how it makes no sense. One major example of this is when Trunks says he knows number 13 will be defeated by Goku because in his timeline, number 13 doesn't exist, which is nonsensical bullshit. Number 16, number 19, and number 20 didn't exist in Trunks' timeline either. Well, number 19 and number 20 did exist, but it was retconned to number 17 and number 18. Anyway, they didn't exist in future Trunks' timeline, and Goku had nothing to do with it. All changes to the timeline were a direct result of Trunks interfering with the defeat of Frieza and Cold Dio by killing them himself when Goku was supposed to do it, so Trunks doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He tries attacking number 13 with his sword, only for it to break. However, it was already previously broken by number 18, and he never uses it again afterwards. Both can't be true at the same time, and only the latter is true anyway. Also, this movie's main antagonist, number 13, assimilates the components of number 14 and number 15 in order to reach his boss mode, which is very similar to Cell absorbing number 17 and number 18 to reach his perfect form. And this movie was released a mere 3 days before Cell reaches his perfect form in the manga. Jesus Christ, Toei keeps getting the jump on Toriyama's ideas. First Super Saiyan, then God Dende, now an artificial human absorbing 2 other ones. This movie has way too many things working against it to allow it to be canon to the series, and it fails more than any other movie because it tries way too hard. But no other movie from this point on will try so hard to fit into the series canon. Will that work out in their favor? Movie 8. Burn Up, Hot Fight, Fierce Fight, Super Violent Fight. Since this movie isn't directly pulling from the series like the previous one was, we have to resort to the tried and true method of analyzing character designs and abilities, Gohan, to determine when this movie takes place. This marks the first movie Gohan's been able to go Super Saiyan, plus he's also sporting the short hair he had around this time. On that note, this also marks the first movie Trunks has long hair and isn't using his sword. However, Gohan is not yet capable of going Super Saiyan Grade 5, aka Super Saiyan 2, as it's never utilized in the battle against Broly. So this clearly takes place before the Cell games, and since there is a 10 days grace period before it, where characters get a moment of downtime, it seems most likely it would fit there as it's the only point during the Cell arc to allow this diversion. Unfortunately, there are issues with that. During this point in time, Goku and Gohan are maintaining their Super Saiyan forms at all times, leading up to and during the Cell games. In this movie, they only go Super Saiyan when fighting Broly. You could argue Chi-Chi told Goku to drop the form while interviewing for Gohan to be accepted into a cram school, but that doesn't explain why Gohan isn't constantly maintaining the form as he isn't present at the interview, and it doesn't explain why Goku doesn't go back into the form as soon as he left Chi-Chi. Speaking of Gohan, He appears to be slightly younger, more like he does during his training in the Room of Spirit and Time than when he exits the room. Plus, he's still wearing the junior version of Piccolo's outfit instead of the full-on outfit complete with shoulder pads. So, fitting it in isn't very seamless, but the Daizenshuu 6 has such a hard-on for fitting in these movies, and it does try to place it during the 10 days before the Cell games, but when you consider they also place movie 6 here as well, plus the anime filler content added in, as well as actual manga events such as a Dragon Ball hunt, Goku and Gohan relaxing, Dende being made God, as well as several characters taking turns in the Room of Spirit and Time, that is one packed week and a half. I've already said in great detail why movie 6 doesn't work, so take that out of the equation entirely. You can remove anime filler as well, but even if we only consider manga events when it comes to fitting this movie into the series, it still doesn't work for all the reasons listed. Not only that, the 10 days leading to the Cell games were a time of panic as people were in fear and trying to run away. I find it highly unlikely there would be an interview for acceptance into a school or a Hanami picnic during this point in time if, as far as everyone knows, the world is ending courtesy of Cell. One more thing making this movie's placement in the series dubious is Broly himself. Or more so the fact that he's the legendary Super Saiyan, or better yet, the fact that the other characters take his existence in stride. The Saiyan characters are informed of the legendary Super Saiyan, yet none of them question it. You'd think they'd question what makes the legendary Super Saiyan different from them, or even claim they are the legendary Super Saiyan, especially in Vegeta's case. They've been under the impression they've reached this legendary transformation. Hell, the chapter after the one where Goku initially transforms is titled Legendary Super Saiyan, so they wouldn't just take someone's word for it without questioning it first. Super Saiyans are always a big deal in the series, especially when there's a new one. Whether it be Vegeta mistakenly believing he and Goku are Super Saiyans, Goku becoming the first Super Saiyan of the series, Trunks' introduction as a second Super Saiyan, Vegeta becoming a Super Saiyan, Gohan correctly ascending beyond a Super Saiyan, Goten and Trunks effortlessly becoming Super Saiyans at such a young age, or Goku's insane Super Saiyan 3 transformation, it's always treated as a shocking moment. So do you really think they'd take the reveal of the legendary Super Saiyan, which is supposedly the true Super Saiyan, and would greatly alter everything they thought they knew about Super Saiyan, in stride? Not a chance in HFIL. This movie was so close. It was actually closer than all the other movies to come before it, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. God damn it, we're 8 movies in and batting 0. Will the next movie turn things around? Movie 9, The Galaxy at the Brink, the Super Incredible Guy. In this movie, Gohan more directly resembles how he looks once exiting the Room of Spirit and Time in terms of age. He has the same short hair, plus he is capable of transforming into a Super Saiyan Grade 5, or as Goku will later call it, Super Saiyan 2. Mr. Satan is treated as the world's hero for defeating Cell, and hosts the Tenkaichi Dai Budo Taikai, and all Dragon Team members participate except for Vegeta, briefly keeping true to his claim of never fighting again. Also, Goku is dead in this movie just as he is in the series. Hell, this movie was released just after Goku commits to being dead in the anime, and he died months prior in the manga. So this is very clearly a post-Cell Games movie, and since its production was started around the time the Cell arc wrapped up, it knows how the arc is resolved. Movie 5 tries to place itself after the events of the Frieza arc, however, the closing events of the arc happened too close to the movie's release, so the movie doesn't know the resolution of the Frieza arc, despite treating itself as a direct continuation of it. This movie doesn't have that issue, and it knows how the Cell arc ended, and it's followed by a 7-year time skip for the Majin Buu arc, so it could fit seamlessly into the series. But there's one thing that's weird about this movie, and that would be Trunks himself. Trunks has long hair in this movie, as he does during and immediately after the Cell Games when he's revived with the Dragon Balls, as opposed to his hair being short again when he returns to his timeline and has all the way to when he kills Cell. It seems like Trunks is plucked from the Cell Games and dropped off into this movie. However, this movie acknowledges him returning to his timeline and killing number 17, number 18, and Cell, and he's present in this movie because he came back to let everyone know he defeated the artificial humans in his timeline. So, he let his hair grow out again before coming back? In both instances of him having long hair, it was due to spending a year in the Room of Spirit and Time. After the first time, Bluma gave him a haircut before he went back into the room. When returning to his timeline to immediately kill number 17 and number 18, his hair was short again and stays short 3 years later when Cell emerges to attempt to kill Trunks and steal his time machine, but gets effortlessly killed by Trunks, who was expecting him. So he waited for his hair to grow long again before returning to the past to let everyone know he defeated the artificial humans of his time? Weird? Unlikely? I'm sure Bluma would keep his hair short. Did he just feel like growing it out for that occasion? This is why it feels more like he was plucked from the Cell Games than from the end of the Cell arc. Another thing worth mentioning is Goku, Kaio, Bubbles, and Gregory are hanging out in front of a wooden house on an ancient tree at the Serpentine Road. This is just like an anime filler where they settle on the same tree and build a house there. But this movie jumps the gun on the TV series by premiering 4 days before the episode where they settle on the tree to build a house, and by the next episode, Goku destroys the house within 5 seconds of Kaio completing it. Then they abandon the location to go find the martial arts masters of Anoyo. In the movie, Goku emerges from the completed house, but that can't coincide with him immediately destroying it in the TV series. Since we don't see Goku's adventures in Anoyo in the manga outside of a brief training session where the Southern Kaio is present during the Majin Buu arc, it leaves everything open-ended and allows it to fit the manga continuity better than the anime continuity. Or at least that's what I'd like to say, if it weren't for one little thing. And that's Gregory. Gregory is an anime exclusive character and does not exist in the manga at all. When Goku was training under Kaio, in the manga, he was instructed to catch Bubbles, and only Bubbles, before the real training started. In the anime, he had to hit Gregory with a hammer after catching Bubbles in order for the real training to start. So this little cricket is the one thing that throws a monkey wrench into trying to tie this movie into the series canon. But can I overlook it? The future Trunks thing is unlikely, but not impossible, so I can overlook that. If I try to overlook the Gregory conundrum, it would call to question who he is and where the HFIL he comes from if you're basing everything on the manga. However, he's such a minor character that it wouldn't matter all that much, as he doesn't do anything in this movie. Compared to all the inconsistencies that plagued past movies, this is really small potatoes. Gregory also appears in Dragon Ball Super, however, that series has plenty of its own continuity issues to the original manga and anime, so that doesn't help its case. But can Gregory be overlooked? It's an inconsistency, but the original manga does have its own fair share of inconsistencies that have more far-reaching consequences to the story than Gregory could ever hope to have, so he's not such a big deal. Therefore, this movie could be canon, but only because I'm being generous and I've been batting zero for long enough. This movie's canon, goddammit! Movie 10, The Dangerous Duo, Super Warriors Can't Rest. This movie marks the theatrical debut of Videl in Goten, and Trunks is 8 years old like he is during the Majin Buu arc. Also, Videl has short hair, meaning we unfortunately don't get to see the objectively better pigtail hairstyle in a movie, but it does let us know this movie plucks the characters from sometime after she cuts her hair and learns Baku Jutsu, as she is shown flying in this movie. Actually, this movie has a wide margin of early Buu arc content to pull from, as it was released after Majin Buu himself was already introduced and pokes Dabra in the eyes in the manga, and the anime had Babidi kill Spopovich and Yamu for succeeding in obtaining ki for Buu. Production of this movie would have likely started at some point later during the 25th Tenkaichi Budokai, and since Videl has short hair and can fly in this movie, the characters are plucked from any time Gohan taught her to manipulate ki to the late stages of the 25th Tenkaichi Budokai, and dropped off into this movie, which creates a big problem. In this movie, Videl, Trunks, and Goten are hunting for Dragon Balls, but this is a point before she would even know about them. During this point, Gohan insisted on keeping certain things secret, such as the fact that he's the golden-haired warrior, aka a Super Saiyan, or even that Saiyans exist, so he definitely would never have told her about the Dragon Balls. She doesn't learn of them until after Buu has emerged, and Vegeta sacrifices himself in a failed attempt to kill Buu, as they were gathered and Shenlong was summoned in order to revive those killed by Vegeta, and that's a point in the story that wasn't even written yet by this movie's release. Everything happening in the series within the span of this movie's production is either spent preparing for the tournament, or the tournament itself, and the tournament immediately gives way to the Majin Buu stuff, and there's too much going on once Buu is active to allow this diversion. Not only that, since Broly returns in this film, that means movie 8 is being acknowledged, but that movie doesn't fit within the series canon, so by default, this movie couldn't fit in either. Movie 11, Super Warriors Defeated, I'm the One Who'll Win. This movie is pretty much in the same boat as the previous one. It's plucking characters from the Majin Buu arc shortly after the 25th Budokai, when Majin Buu was already active by this point. The Boo arc has too much going on in a short amount of time to allow this detour to Jagabada's castle, where Mr. Satan was invited to fight Bio-Warriors. This movie acknowledges the 25th Tenkaichi Budokai, where number 18 takes a dive, allowing Mr. Satan to remain champion in the condition that he pays her the prize money for winning. Here, she comes to collect the money and breaks his stuff to intimidate him, and even goes with him to May Queen Castle to be sure he doesn't try to run away and hide without paying her. But in the series, there's no time for any of this. After Vegeta commits mass murder on the tournament grounds, she comes along on a Dragon Ball hunt to revive those he killed. Then Goku takes everyone to God's temple in the heavenly realm to keep them safe from Boo, and they stay there until Boo kills them all. Meanwhile, Mr. Satan disappears for preparation to take out Boo, then re-emerges to kill him, but ends up befriending him until circumstances cause Boo to be defeated and taken over by the very evil he expelled, and Mr. Satan is left alone with no one but his dog. Also, this movie is acknowledging the previous non-canon Broly films, and just like movie 6 acknowledging the previous non-canon Cooler film, these movies cannot be canon no matter how hard you try. Movie 12, Fusion Reborn, Goku and Vegeta. As the name implies, the fusion dance is featured in this movie, and this marks the first theatrical appearance of Gotenks. He even uses his Super Ghost Kamikaze attack to take out Zombie Hitler and his army. Also, both Goku and Vegeta are dead at this point, so this movie plucks the characters from a point ranging from Gotenks' fight with Majin Buu in the Room of Spirit and Time to before the Elder Kaioshin transfers his life force to Goku. With that in mind, there's no way to slot this movie into the series because the events of the Buu arc plain and simply don't lend to any detours in the story, so this movie has the same issue as the two Broly sequels. However, this movie calls even more attention to its lack of cohesion than they do. When fighting Janemba, Goku goes Super Saiyan 3 and mentions Majin Buu being the only other person to push him to using the form. So, where is Majin Buu right now? Was he defeated? Did he fuck off to somewhere else? Did Buu ever transform in this movie's continuity? What happened to him? This movie takes place during a point in time where the threat of Majin Buu has not yet been resolved, and Goku and Vegeta are dead here, but get revived before Buu is ultimately defeated by the Genki Dama. Also, the Dragon Balls are used in this movie, but they were also used in the Buu arc to revive those killed by Vegeta, so there's no way for this movie to fit in during or after the events of the Buu arc. It can't fit before the Buu arc either, because Goku may be dead, but Vegeta is alive at that point, plus Gohan wasn't the Great Saiyaman yet. Gohan and Vegeta aren't supposed to know Goten and Trunks are Super Saiyans yet. Gohan hasn't met Videl yet. Fusion hasn't been introduced yet, and no one knows of Majin Buu yet before the arc. But this movie clearly takes place during the events of the Buu arc, but can't coexist with them. Canon? I think not! Movie 13, Dragon Fist Explosion. If Goku won't do it, who will? This movie is unique among Dragon Ball films, as it's the only one that's part of the original run of Dragon Ball that was released after the manga had already ended. The manga ended about 2 months prior to this movie's release. Toei were in a good position to have a movie not contradict the events of the series, as there is a wide margin for this movie to fit into. Both Goku and Vegeta are alive in this movie, which means this movie takes place after the Elder Kaioshin transferred his life force to Goku, and after Porunga revives Vegeta, the latter of which was during the fight against the purest form of Majin Buu, so this movie can very easily take place after Buu is defeated. So, there's no problem in regards to the series' events that could be happening to conflict with this movie's events. But, there are some weird things going on. At the end of the movie, Trunks receives a sword from Tapion, which resembles the sword future Trunks used, and the end credits flashback to future Trunks killing Frieza with the sword, making people assume Tapion appeared in future Trunks' timeline, but there's no evidence to support that, and would be highly unlikely. The music box Tapion was sealed in was sent to Earth, so Hoi would come to Earth to ask Trunks to help open the box to release Tapion, so the top half of Hirudegarn would be released and join its bottom half. But there's one problem. How the fuck are they supposed to open it? No one was able to open it with Brawn, not even Goku could open it. The box was opened by a wish made to Shenlong, but that's entirely off the table during future Trunks' timeline, as Piccolo died ages ago, so God is dead as well, so there are no Dragon Balls. What other options are there to open it? Fuck if I know. But if I gave them the benefit of the doubt and they did manage to open it, that means Hirudegarn would get loose and start to rampage, and if that happened, then number 17 and number 18 would be the least of Trunks' problems. However, there's nothing that explicitly states the sword Tapion gave Trunks and the sword future Trunks used are one and the same. The end credits showing future Trunks with his sword after Tapion gave present Trunks his sword could simply be a symbolic gesture and isn't meant to be taken literally as the origin of future Trunks' sword. The swords looking similar to one another doesn't mean much, considering the Z sword Gohan briefly used also looks fairly similar to those swords. So this could just be a common design for swords in universe. There's nothing in this movie that directly contradicts anything in the series. So finally, I can confidently say, without any caveats, that this movie can be canon. Holy crap, that was a fuckload of movies. Out of a whopping 13 Dragon Ball Z movies, only 2 of them could potentially be canon to the manga, but one of them has an asterisk next to it because there are certain details about that movie you have to fudge in order for it to fit. But that highlights how out of place with the continuity these movies really are. So trying to force them into it is an exercise in futility. These movies were only meant to be bonus material to be enjoyed for their own merits, rather than part of the ongoing narrative of Dragon Ball. Although certain movies can make the mistake of trying to tie themselves into the events of the series too much. So even though there are 2 movies that have a chance to be included within the continuity of the series, at the end of the day,
this is so non-canon it hurts.
Thank you for watching this video. This video was a long time coming, and this video turned out to be much longer than I was anticipating it to be. I thought this video would have been about 45 minutes long, around the length of my Dragon Ball Super Broly review, but it turned out to be much longer than that, clocking in over an hour. So when I eventually make my review of Dragon Ball Super Superhero, that one is going to be even longer than this one. I have a lot to say about that movie, but the script still needs a bit of revisions done with it to make sure it's just right before it goes out. So I ask you to still be a little patient with me, but I decided to go on ahead and make this video because the script has been ready for a long time, and now I got a much better microphone to work with than what I've been using before, so now would be a good time to make it. So for those of you who were patiently waiting for me to release this video since I first teased it in my community post a few years ago, I gotta say I really appreciate you guys for sticking with this channel for so long. I still have plenty of videos to make, and every video that I promised you that I would make, I very much intend on doing so. So the superhero movie review is coming out, as well as that 15 misconceptions in Dragon Ball video I promised. Not to mention the Spider-Man review series that I said I was going to make back in that YouTube short when I was in the theater after having seen Spider-Man No Way Home. Not to mention there's my ongoing review series, My 2 Cents on Dragon Ball Daima, where every episode of that series has a dedicated video to reviewing it. And I recently made a new version of my Everything Wrong With Tree of Might video after the original video was taken down by YouTube being a bunch of dickheads. Not only that, there's just still plenty of other miscellaneous things I want to do, including more Everything Wrong With videos, as well as many different topic videos, so there's a lot on the horizon for this channel, and I can assure you, I'm not going anywhere. So leave your thoughts in the comments. Also like this video and subscribe to my channel so you can see all my content right away when it comes out. That'll be the end of this video. Have a good day, everyone. This is Trace, signing out.